Manny Skevophilax. I love talking about small business. I love talking to business owners, entrepreneurs. Manny is a financial advisor, financial wizard. He wrote a great book. He has great background in helping small to medium businesses with their finances. Do you know the difference between somebody in finance and somebody in accounting? I wonder if you do. What analogies can be drawn? It's very tough to be a business owner, an entrepreneur. Do you know how to read profit and loss statement? We start the conversation. Manny's a first generation immigrant. His parents are from a small island in Greece, and many of the lessons he learned working in their restaurant. It was nice working, always having cash right in a restaurant, but you're working 7 days a week, and how he translated that. He said the parents said you're going to need an education. He went and got a bachelor's degree. He went to work for banks. He had to leave home. He collected all that information. Now he helps these businesses with their finance. A lot of businesses don't want to deal with finance. You're kind of letting somebody see yourself naked, a bit vulnerable, but it's essential. It's essential to have somebody that you can trust that can really run things by you and see trends and make forecasts and do budgeting, etc. But it's a great conversation with Manny. His view on discipline is very, very enlightening. Love these conversations. He's just a great, great guy to talk to. Time went by very, very quickly. Really, really cool talking to Manny. I look forward to meeting him face to face one day. Thanks for listening. Hi, I'm Joey Pins, and here's my 45-second introduction. After starting my business in the 90s, I started developing poor habits of eating in my diet because of working way too much. Before you know it, I found myself 340 pounds. The doctor told me if I don't lose the weight, I'm not going to see my daughter graduate. Took the next 7 months, lost 130 pounds. People think there's some secret. Ask me, how'd you lose that weight? Like there's some secret. There is no secret. How'd I lose the weight? Just one word, discipline. I've had other successes in life, and I attribute them all to discipline. Now, I'm not the king of discipline, but I believe that it can help all of us. Friends, colleagues convinced me to start a podcast. The podcast mission? How do we better ourselves and society? I talk to interesting people in health, fitness, sport, wellness, business, technology, science, art, and culture. And I eventually ask them how discipline plays a role in their life. Podcast vision, growth through learning from others. To it. Very, very excited to talk to you, Manny Skevophilax.
Man, you got it.
Yeah.
How do you say yours?
In Italian, we say panone, but here in the States, we say panone.
Panone. Una fazza, una razza.
Ah,
that's Italian.
It sure is.
That's what my Italian friends' grandfathers used to tell us when we'd go over and eat that good Italian food. One face, one race.
That's it. Yeah, fazza razza. Yeah. Manny, what do you learn? What do you gain from exploring those ruins there at Carpathos?
Oh man, you ready for this? I feel a tremendous sense of guilt. First of all, in that I feel like I've had an easy life. I feel that as first generation born here. So my parents came over on the boat, right? They're from the same island, but they didn't know each other back then. They met here in America.
Wow.
And it is a story of survival. And so when you're young, you're like, man, what a badass beach. I can get in the water up to my neck, see my feet. I'm partying. You love going out at 1:00 in the morning and coming home at 8 a.m. It's a whole different scene, right?
Sure.
But as you get older and you start understanding and realizing the struggle that went on there, no electricity, no refrigeration, working your butt off to just plant some seeds, right? And have that grain grow and then build a little windmill by the stream to put a milling rock in place, so you could mill that seed. I mean, it's just like, you know what? And I tell all my young nieces and nephews, we're the lucky ones. We are the lucky ones. Say what you want about this country, but it's still the greatest country in the world. And we're very lucky. So I just get to see this stuff. It looks like, the people just got up and left, Joe.
Mm-hmm.
The little houses are there. They're stone with no mortar. Yeah, I mean, it's really something.
Wow.
And it makes you feel guilty. It makes me feel guilty.
Right.
Because I didn't have to bust my ass. When I look at the top of these mountains that they had to walk up, because not everybody, you had to go with the inheritance plan, right? So it depended on what you inherited. So the number one son and the number one daughter would inherit the prime parcels, which were up on the mountain where the olive trees were. And then if you were third or fourth kid, you would inherit the beachfront property, which means that you were going to be poverty stricken, right?
Hmm.
Because there was no way to make a living by owning the
Right.
beachfront property until, a couple thousand years later. Right? So, it's just been, it helps keep me grounded. Sorry for the
Mm.
long story. It's
Wow.
something I'm very passionate about.
My
And,
father's an Italian immigrant, and when he tells
mhm.
me that he got his first pair of shoes when he was 12,
Yeah,
hard to relate.
yeah, yeah. When did he come to America?
He came in the early 60s.
Okay.
My
My
cousin
dad came
came at
in
first
50,
in the 50. Yeah.
1950, and my mom in 54. And they had poverty. They didn't have food. We go to the grocery store, we got food from the ceiling to the floor of the
Mm,
store,
mm, mm.
you know, and they had balls. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? A lot of guts, both the men and the women. So I try to hold myself to that higher standard, Joe, and I don't complain and I count my blessings every day.
It's hard to he talks about the first time they got a light bulb, electricity in the what we want to
Hmm.
call a house, just their kind of one room kind of, you
Yeah.
know, building. But it's just hard to relate, Manny. And
Yeah.
we've had it easier. Our kids, this generation that's here has it easier. They still have challenges, of course, but they're just very different.
Yeah. That's well said, Joe. Very well said.
Hard to relate, but keeping in mind and looking at those ruins really grounds you. That's really comforting to hear. We all need that, don't we?
Yeah, definitely. There's a old saying, right? Pride comes before the fall,
Mm.
you know, and we have the story of Icarus, the Greek who his dad warned him, hey, wings are awesome, but don't fly too close to the sun.
Yeah.
He didn't want to listen to his dad, just like good Greek and Italian boys don't want to listen to dad, right?
No. Yeah. So
uh,
you're here in the country, and your parents have a restaurant because that's what a lot of Greeks did at that
mhm.
point. And it's long hours, but you're learning to like it because you always got cash and you like dealing with people. It's pretty good for a
Mhm.
while.
Yeah, I like coming home with cash in my pocket every day, and I'm learning a lot. A lot of different topics are covered. I think it's a great training ground, the restaurant
Mm,
business. You learn how to deal with people, you learn how to deal with supplies, you learn how to deal with math. There's a
mm,
lot going on. The only thing is you got to do all the work, right?
yeah.
They didn't know about a concept named delegation, our
Right.
our people, right?
Yeah, and there's always something to do. It can never be clean enough, So you're leaning against a wall. That's on you. You're going to hear it, right? So,
Yeah.
there's always something to do, and just dealing with people, like you said, everybody needs to get some kind of sales job at one point in their youth. Just being able to interact with other humans because you're going to be doing it in life, whether you like it or not.
That's a great point. That's a great point. You know, it's a great place to train, and you can make your mistakes there, and the customers are accommodating, right? They
Right.
understand that you're training. So yeah, that's very well said, Joe.
Yeah, I worked at my friend's Greek restaurant for a while, and my father was a welder. So with him, but still, it's interesting. He taught me when I went to on jobs with him. He'd be with me a certain way. Get that wrench, get whatever. He could be very curt, but as soon as the customer was around, he smiled. He laughed even when it wasn't funny. It's just like, oh, you just kind of learn. Okay, when the
Uh,
when the person who's paying around, we have to kind of switch modes a bit.
that's it. They told me that the customer's money will spend anywhere,
Mm.
right? That money is green, and it wasn't delivered politely, right? As you know very well, because you're showing me that you're highly experienced in this world. So money is green. The customer's money is green. It can spend anywhere. So you better make darn sure that they want to come back. That their
Yeah.
experience, was so fulfilling that they want to come back and visit.
Mm.
Mhm.
Yeah, some valuable lessons there. Manny, should every business owner, every entrepreneur, should they know how to read a profit and loss statement?
In my opinion, Joe, yes.
Hmm,
Unless you're one of the old Greeks or Italians or the other ethnic groups that can do the math in their heads,
right.
you know. So,
Yeah, there wasn't a
right?
lot of bookkeeping back then. They was eventually forced
Uh,
to because of the government,
yeah,
but I mean, so the P&L, just simple expenses,
that's
income,
it.
et cetera. They should be able to just understand it.
That's it. You have to understand. You don't want to be working so hard, and you don't really fully understand if you're making a profit. This profit is the key. It's the lifeblood that's going to enable you to take care of your employees, take care of your family, being able to
Mm.
donations to the community. It all comes off of profit.
I heard you say a
Yeah.
quote that you learned. I think you said from a plastic surgeon. It's easy to make. No, it's hard to make money. It's harder to save money. You know what I'm going to say? Did I
Yeah, I
mess it
do.
up?
It's not. It's a plastic surgeon taught me that.
Yeah.
It's not how much money you make; it's how much money you keep. And I know this guy was making millions of dollars a year. So I
Mm,
was like 25 when he told me that. I was dumbfounded. But I finally understood what he was trying to say. My dad was telling me something similar, but he had a different way of
mm,
putting it. He was live within your means.
right.
So we're like, well, let's just make more money, so we can have higher means. So yeah, it's not how much you make. You can make $1 million a year, but if you need 1,000,001 to live, what's the difference between you and the guy that's making 100 grand a year that needs 110,000 to live?
Mm.
Yeah,
Yeah, my
very
father would
interesting.
always he would always say, whenever he like reached back for his wallet, he'd moan or he'd pinch himself or
Uh
something. So he experienced pain along with spending.
huh.
Because they didn't have anything when they were
Yeah,
kids, and
yeah.
here I am, dad, can I have 20 to go to the movies and bring my girlfriend? He's like, well, he didn't have anything, no equivalent of that.
Right.
Um, so getting back to business ownership. So your parents said you need a degree. They're not going to leave you $1 million, so you
Uh-huh.
got your bachelor's and you ended up going into business. And I'm in the tech industry now, Manny, and these are wonderful, innovative entrepreneurs I work with. Wonderful. But a
Mhm.
lot of them can't read a P&L. A lot of them don't understand sales and marketing, but they're very good at the craft that they do.
Mhm.
How do you work with them?
You're describing pretty much all my clients.
Right.
90% of them. Only that small percentage knows the finance part. And I just share with them, look, you are an expert at your trade, and I am an expert on this boring finance stuff. I'm just here to
Mm.
help you. I can explain this to you very simply. And that's what I do. I work with them. I learn their business model, and then we work together to just take it to higher and better levels.
The
I
difference
got a guy
between
that still. I'm
Go ahead.
sorry.
You.
I got a guy that still doesn't understand the statement of cash flows.
Right.
Right. So I'll be in Home Depot 9 o'clock on a Saturday morning. My phone rings. He's like, I can't understand this darn statement of cash flows. Well, I said, don't worry about it. That's why you got me. And I told you,
Mm.
please call me, and he does. You know, doesn't need you don't need to know it. Just somebody that can explain it to you in 25 words or less. Right.
It's daunting because you're letting somebody that you kind of know, like yourself, somebody like see you naked, right? It's
Yeah.
very vulnerable,
Yeah.
and so for these business, hey, I'm really good at making this product
Hmm.
service, and a lot of them have the attitude, I'm so good that if they don't want to buy it, so what? Screw them, because only the people who understand will buy, so they have the mentality, and which is good in a way that they're really good at what they do, but they have to open up themselves to these other areas to widen their market and be a little bit vulnerable. Nobody likes to be vulnerable.
It's intimate.
Yeah.
They're letting you into the inner sanctum, the
Mm.
financials. Nobody ever says, man, I got questions. Everybody just says, I'm doing fantastic. Greatest year ever. They keep those questions in the back of their minds and they don't let anybody in. It's really difficult to get in. It's human nature, in my experience. You know, we don't like to change, and we don't like to ask for help.
Mm.
It's tough. But once you can convince that business owner that you're there and you care, you're just not another client. I
Mm.
don't care if Joe Panone goes out of business. Once you convince them, I care. I
Mm.
can go get another client tonight. But what's going to happen to you? You got
Mm.
25 years invested here. So you try to use some reason and say, don't work for nothing. Make sure that the fruits of your labor, you're being compensated for it. You're getting the value out of it.
And it's hard to be a business owner, Manny, right? I mean, the odds are against you. What are the numbers are crazy, right? First year, 90% fail, 5 years, it's
Mhm.
50%. And, trying to make payroll, when I started
Yeah.
my company in the 90s, I remember we had bought a bunch of companies. And so we were at about 50, 60 employees and we had a picnic. And I was at the picnic and all of a sudden, these people are introducing me to their kids and their grandkids.
Mhm.
I say these people, my employees.
Sure.
And I'm getting stressed out, Manny. I remember not having a good time thinking this little thing that I started in my garage is now affecting grandkids.
Mhm.
What have I done? And I remember being, going back and like working that evening and kind of tightening up a little bit. So I mean, it's very difficult for these business owners. They're thrust into this position, whether they like it or not.
First of all, congratulations. That's a big
Yeah.
deal. I read that for each employee that you employ, 10 people depend on that employee.
Wow.
So take that number you just gave me, multiply it by 10.
Mm,
No pressure,
mm,
right? Where do you learn that? Who can teach you to just, to be relaxed about it? It's a lot of responsibility.
it
People don't
is.
understand. It's a lot of responsibility. And the odds are stacked against you. You're bootstrapping, right? Nobody
Mm,
came and handed you a pot of money,
mm.
right? You're taking a little bit of profit from that first client and a little bit of profit from the second client, trying to get to the third and fourth. It's not easy, but it can be
Yeah,
done. It can be
it,
done,
it can be done.
Just got to manage your own expectations, is what I
Mm,
found. That's why I say make your growth goals reasonable. And reasonable is defined differently by different people.
mm,
What might be reasonable to you, 10% top line growth, might be completely unreasonable to the next person. They're like,
mm.
10%, man, if I can't grow this thing 40% this year, I'm not getting out of bed.
Whew.
You know? So, yeah.
It's difficult. It's difficult to be a business owner, and you have to have good people. You mentioned it before, where a lot of them didn't know how to delegate. You have to have
Mhm.
good people that handle certain areas. You can't do it yourself. I have some firms that I work with that I do some fractional work with, and Manny, they're still ordering the pizza.
Yeah.
I mean, you don't need to do that. 80/20, if somebody could do it 80% as good as you, get it off your desk. Delegation is very tough for a lot of business owners.
I mean, you make an excellent point. Um, there are business owners that are micromanagers. They can't
Right.
help it. It's an emotional thing. And it's something that that person needs to learn on their own. I don't think it's anything that somebody can quote unquote help you in.
Mm,
It's something that you got to get comfortable with. So the way I go about it, Joe, is I tell them, you hire smart people, and I read this in the past, to tell you what to do. You
mm,
don't hire the smart people so you can tell them what to do.
mm,
Try to get used to it. That's why you hired this person that you said, oh, I just got this A player. Well, let them give you their opinion,
mm, mm.
so you can build some trust, and then you'll let them hopefully start handling some stuff. You don't have to be in every place all the time. You can't.
Manny, what's the difference between finance and accounting?
Okay, good question. So accounting is the actual preparation, let's call it, and presentation of a business's financial results,
Hmm.
in my opinion. All right. So that's the accounting portion of the exercise. You know, a dollar came in, a dollar came out. In America, we have something called generally accepted accounting principles.
Gap.
And that's what serves to keep everybody on the same page. It means different things to different people,
Hmm.
but it's something that's quote unquote generally accepted. So, preparation and presentation of financial results, which is very important,
Yes.
very important. And then the finance side of the business, in my opinion, is the actual inner workings of the cash. We can't pay payroll with an account receivable. We can't pay
Hmm.
the gas and the electric bill with a piece of paper. So we
Hmm.
have to come to grips with everything in our life revolves around cash. Cash coming in the door, cash coming out the door. So in my opinion, that's the all-encompassing term. That's the finance side of the business. Joe went and did some tech work for X client. You know, what are Joe's terms with this client, right? Joe knows that he's got to pay payroll, let's just say twice a month. He's got a bunch of vendor bills that are due within 30 days. Joe can't wait 60 days to get paid
Hmm.
because 60 days to get paid. If you need money in 30 days, you got a 30-day cash gap. That's the finance portion. And then it gets a little interesting, right? How do you quote unquote finance something that might involve borrowing money
Hmm.
from an intermediary or a bank? And then financing could also include the investment portion. So like finance would be like a big umbrella in my opinion. So the two of them work hand in hand, the accounting and finance department.
I think many owners need to understand that difference. It kind of, I don't know if we could draw the same comparison here, Manny, but the difference between a manager and a leader. I've
Hmm.
had managers before that thought they were leaders
Mm-hmm.
and they weren't. And then I've had leaders who thought they were leaders, but they're really managers. Like, I don't know if we could draw the comparison, but what in your eyes, what's the difference between a manager and a leader?
That's a very good and difficult question. I am going to do my best. So, in my experience, a manager is like a defined role in an organization that defines responsibilities, I would say. You're the manager and you're subject to certain constraints, right? And you have certain goals and outcomes. So,
Hmm.
you're quote unquote managing. I would say that you're in the weeds and you're checking on other people's performances, things of that nature. Versus, again, in my opinion, the leader is someone that is helping other people realize their full potential. You're not micromanaging them. You could actually call the leader the coach
Hmm.
in a sense, you know? So the leader doesn't necessarily have to have a title, right? You can be the instrumental leader or the expressive leader. I learned that in the past. I thought that was pretty cool.
Hmm.
Somebody in your organization does not have a title in Joe Panone's company,
Hmm.
but all the other employees go to that person for guidance. That's the leader in your company. And that person might not be the manager and
Hmm.
might not have a title. I've always found that fascinating.
It is the way a lot of the companies work is really fascinates me. So managers more kind of day to day, looking at goals, looking at metrics, whereas leaders kind of forward looking. So that really isn't. So I was making a relationship with a manager being an accountant, looking at the pictures day to day, what's happening, whereas finance is a little bit more forward thinking and big picture thinking. Probably not the best analogy.
Yeah, it might be a
Stretch.
difficult comparison. Let me share
Yeah.
this. So on the accounting side, it's dominated by CPAs, certified public
Mm,
accountants. They go to
mm,
school and they take a specific curriculum. Okay. And then some of them specialize in not only putting that financial statement together, and forgive me, but I'm going to give you a little extra. So, a financial statement, it has three levels of review according to the American system, right? You have something called a company prepared statement, which is just you going to your accounting software, printing out a statement. Next would be a reviewed financial statement, where the financial statement that you provide, it needs your outside CPA to render an opinion. Okay. And that's more of an investment for you. But that's because somebody else is depending on that opinion. They're not taking Joe Panone's word for it. They're taking your outside CPA's opinion. And then the third is the audit. So we're just talking about financial statement preparation here. If you want to go borrow, let's just say, a few $1,000,000 from a bank, you're probably going to need an audited financial so they can hang their hat on it. The other piece of the CPAs is the tax code. That is a full-time job in itself. Trying to understand the taxes. Your finance people are more like me. I have been trained in a different skill set. I need to work with that CPA. They're a very valuable member of the team. I am trained in financial statement analysis. I started in the bottom of a bank, and I went through a training program, and I worked in that bank and got moved around to all the different departments, small business lending, middle market, car lending, this and that, to learn. And I need to take that CPA's financial statement, which hopefully is accurate, and I am conducting analysis on it to help you, Joe. And we're talking about things like margins, net income, the finance piece. So that's how those two kind of play together.
It's an important distinction.
Yes.
Because I think those business owners that are young at it don't really want to know I heard you talk about it. Like sometimes when reviewing expenses, for example, they don't want to be told I think you were talking about budgeting. I heard you talk about budgeting, and some people budget to the penny. Some people just estimate, and they don't want to be told they can't spend this much on whatever. So it's just like, oh, let them handle it. And we see it in movies that the accountant comes in and saying, you're spending too much and stop spending. And it's the important distinction between accounting and finance. So why write The Ultimate Profit Management?
I felt like I kept seeing the same movie over and over again. And I got to the point where I was just chuckling to myself saying, I've seen this movie. I know how it ends. And the movie was a business owner growing that business successfully. Okay. We're all going to put the blood, sweat, and tears in it. Some people are going to emerge. Some business owners are going to emerge successfully, and some are going to fail. So I kept seeing that the ones that were successful were the ones that had profit and knew how to manage it. And the ones that weren't successful were constantly doing things that were not healthy for the profits of the company, and constantly had that business owner under pressure. I can't make payroll. Payroll's 2 weeks out. They're tapping you on the shoulder. Joe, we're short. Or I need to buy this machine. If I buy this machine, okay, for $1 million, I can grow my revenue. I can get a 5-year contract that'll do $5 million. But I don't have the money. I can't get the financing for that $1 million piece of equipment because I'm not profitable. So that was the overriding thing. I wanted to put everything that my teachers and mentors, and I'm taking you all the way back to the beginning, right? My mother, my father, other teachers and mentors. And then I got a chance to work with 3 billionaire business families.
That's right.
So where mom, dad, teachers, and mentors were doing everything in their head, I was under the wrong impression that the billionaires had to be doing something very complex, right? We didn't have money to invest in systems and stuff like that, right? It was very labor intensive. I always thought that the billionaires, they had, the best systems, the best this, the best that. I was dead wrong. What they were doing was the same. It was very simple. Keep it simple. That's how you manage the far-flung empire. So I wanted to put all these thoughts down on paper. That was reason number one for writing the book. And then number two was for my nieces and nephews to show them that their grandparents' journey from Greece to America was not in vain. That if their uncle was able to publish a book, that they could accomplish anything they set their mind to
Hmm.
here in America. And then I wanted the blueprint to survive me for small business owners to use. So that blueprint, I got it on paper now. That's the blueprint for success. I've seen it over and over again. Because we lost sight of bootstrapping. The
Hmm.
last like 15, 16 years in our country have been really fascinating, in my opinion. We have this focus on, oh, I'm just going to go get some investors to lend me money. I need to become a $1 billion unicorn. I'm going to be able to exit this and become the next Zuckerberg. Well, those people that are investing this money, they play a very important role. And it's very difficult to get them to finance
Hmm.
a business. To convince a stranger to come in and write Joe Panone a check it's not easy.
Right.
And you need to bootstrap. There's nothing wrong with bootstrapping. That's how the majority of businesses started in America and became successful. Taking a little bit of profit, putting it onto moving up the ladder. So those were the main reasons, Joe.
But the process of writing a book is very different from running a business and doing the things that you were formerly trained in. How did you find the exercise?
No, it's not fun at all. And by the way, marketing a book
Oh,
is 1,000 times harder than writing a book.
yeah.
So I unfortunately, I always tell my clients, don't get thrown into the frying pan. You're a veteran now, right? Don't get thrown in there with that hot olive oil bubbling. And I found that I threw myself into the frying pan.
Hmm.
So, okay, but I got a chance to learn something new. And I
Hmm.
like learning something new every day. So, it scratched that itch. Yeah, and that's what it took.
I find the same thing with writing software or writing an app. I have so many buddies who have the idea of writing, creating an app. Creating it's not that difficult. Selling it,
Uh,
trying to get the subscriptions, that's and it's the same thing, with a book. But it's wonderful to have that kind of under your belt, Manny, to have something like that. And um you kind of alluded it to there, how the last 10, 15 years have been interesting. You make mention of the great kind of pivot with the recession,
mhm.
like what we had to do with that great recession pivot. Can you comment on
Yeah.
that?
Sure. I mean, I lived it. It was
Me too.
miserable.
Oh
I
God.
had um I had banks were just sending out form letters to the business owners and just saying, "Dear Mr. Panone, your business is no longer welcome at the bank. You have 90 days to find a new relationship." So now Joe Panone, let's say he's got a business line of credit, he might have some term debt. How are you going to go find another bank all of a sudden that doesn't even know who you are to take on your relationship? And what happens if you can't? It was a very stressful time.
It was.
Stressful for my clients who weren't used to it. The other one was the home equity line of credit. You
Mm,
had, let's just throw out numbers, a $200,000 home equity line of credit, and you had borrowed 100 grand off of it. So you're like right where you need to be. They say don't ever borrow more than 50%. Everything was great. And you just get a letter in the mail. It says, "Dear Mr. Panone, your $200,000 line of credit is now $100,000."
mm,
So you were depending on that 100 as your head would hit the pillow at night. You're like, you know what? Worst case scenario. Worst case, I
mm.
got access to this 100 on the house if I get into a pinch. And and next thing you know, they take it away from you. And not only did they take it away from you, they now fully funded. Now your instrument is fully funded, which has now dropped your credit score.
Mm.
So I made a decision because I was under a tremendous amount of stress. I said, I'm not doing this anymore. I'm going
Mm.
to tell my clients that let's just focus from now on about having quote unquote good debt and forget about any debt that doesn't lead to you making more money. Forget about
Mm.
it. So I sent the email out, said, here's what we're doing from now on, you know, and I proceeded to lose half of my clients.
Wow.
Hmm. They said, no, thank you. And boy, that was a really a shocker for me. But in hindsight, the ones that stayed on and said, okay, they're all wildly successful today,
Mm.
you know, wildly successful. Because we get caught up. We get caught up here in America. We have access to credit. The worst thing that happened to me was I got a credit card. It came to my dad's house when I turned 18 years old, and it had my name on it
Yeah.
with a $500 credit limit. Joe, it was maxed out days later.
Yeah.
And I couldn't pay it off, which is crazy. So that access to credit, we have to be very careful that we use it appropriately, especially if you're a business guy, because business people are not negative. They're very positive. They're like, look, okay, all right. So I had a setback. I'm going to get this next client. Okay. I'm going to make a couple dollars. Things are going to be fine. I'm not worried. I'll borrow this $100,000 or this $1,000,000. It'll be okay. I got this big, huge pipeline. I'm going to close something. Well, okay. Well, so you borrow and then who knows? Something crazy happens like COVID-19.
Mm.
And the government comes and tells you, you know what, Joe, your business is not essential. You need to shut down.
Wow.
That's never happened in the history of our country. Who are you to tell me that my business is not essential? I got my blood, sweat, and tears. I've got all these employees. I got to multiply that number by 10 for people that are depending on me. How am I going to manage this? So that's that delicate balance that you got to share with the business owners. And a lot of them don't like it. They don't like it. They perceive it as being fearful. And business owners, self-made business owners that are bootstrappers are not fearful, right? So,
What book is it? I think it's E-Myth, where it describes like deciding to run your own business is like a head seizure or something. I don't remember. So I remember when I first started my business. I remember my friends telling me, "Wow, it must be so nice. You don't have anybody telling you what to do. You don't have a boss." I said, "I have more bosses now than I've ever had." Every one of my clients and their employees and the vendors and the banks and partially my employees, do not go into a business thinking you won't have a boss anymore.
I mean, that's very well said, you know. And then
Ah,
you got to be careful when you're in business that, when you go start your business, that the new boss is worse than the one that you left from that corporation, right? Right? Because we're tough on ourselves. We hold ourselves to a high standard. So, yeah, it's interesting. But you can make your own schedule, right?
that's the flexibility of schedule is the best thing.
Right?
No question. You're still working 60 hours a week, but on your
Uh-huh.
own 60 hours,
Yeah.
yeah, it's that is
Yeah.
nice. You mentioned before that you talked, you worked with some billionaires, and I heard you say that
Yeah.
you thought they were like lighting their cigars with $100 bills. But come to find out, they work just as hard as everyone
Yeah,
else.
they do. That was a shocker to me. They're flying 200,000 miles a year on Delta. Operations are so big that they can't visit every location in a year. It's impossible. And that's where I learned that they were doing the same thing that my teachers, mentors, parents were doing.
Mm,
The same thing. They're keeping it simple. They're explaining things in 25 words or less. I'm like, why? They're like, because if you can explain it in 25 words or less, very simply, first of all, it means that you understand it ice cold yourself. And number two, people are more likely to buy into what you're saying and therefore help you reach the outcome that you're looking for. Where if it's really complicated, your employees are going to be fearful of coming to Joe, the boss, and saying, Joe, I don't understand what you're telling me.
mm.
I don't understand what you mean. Or say, no, I can't. Nobody wants to tell their boss no. So it was very, very eye opening, very valuable. And then we examine the time, right? When you work that 60 hours, what are you doing all 60 hours? Are they all beneficial to Joe Panone and his company?
Hmm.
Is there a way that we can convert some of these hours to family time, right? Or strategic planning time? Why are you burning it up when you have so many employees? Why are you still burning it up? So those are always interesting conversations and helpful.
Very helpful. We're in this mode of kind of Instagram where we see these people, thinking their life is so great. I have few friends that have done really have had great exits. I had a great exit too, but some a little bit
Mhm.
more valuable, right? They sold their company
Okay.
for a lot, and when they're still has the same cell phone. They're still
Right.
eating at the same restaurants. They're still going to the
Mhm.
same doctors. They're still driving on the same streets. I mean,
Mhm.
this idea that they're just so different. Instead of, one person said, instead of a nickel, I'm using a dime. But
Uh-huh.
everything else is the same, Joe. Everything, and it's true. It's just this different way of looking at it. Billionaires. I remember hearing one statistic recently. New York City has like almost 50 billionaires.
I did not know that.
Yeah,
I did not know that.
I'm not saying they're common, but I'm saying there's more than ever. But it, I don't know. Those that make a goal of being a billionaire, I always have to wonder about that. Just stay healthy and try to be happy.
Yes, that's where we realize that our health is the number one asset,
Mm,
right? Because regardless of how much money you have, if you don't have your health, what do you really have?
yeah.
You know? And my parents were telling me that when I didn't have any money,
Mm,
that my health was my most valuable asset. And I'm like, what are these people talking about? And it wasn't until I got older, and I'm sure you've heard this one, your health is your wealth.
yeah.
And I'm like, what are these people talking about? So again, here we go back to managing expectations
Yeah.
because I drove myself crazy with unreasonable expectations until finally I got older and I got the memo. You just got to have a good time every day,
Mm,
right? And not put unreasonable goals on yourself, which is going to lead to unreasonable pressure. And it's I can't give you the prescription or the recipe. You got to figure it out on your own. What works for Joe might necessarily not work for Mandy. But once you find it, that's when you're in the sweet spot, in my opinion.
you just reminded me, man. I would constantly talk to my father. Didn't understand technology, didn't understand the service business, but
Mhm.
he'd constantly call my employees helpers, which was which was always amusing. But I remember at one particular point, I was going to get a bigger office. We were getting a little tight in there, and I told my father, and he says to me, in his deep Italian accent, and he says, you know, Tony and Luigi every day from Milan would get in their truck and they'd go up to Switzerland and they'd buy watermelon for 1,000 lira each. Then they'd come to Milan and they'd sell it for 1,000 lira each. After 60 days, Tony said, "Luigi, we're not making any money." And Luigi said, "I know. We need a bigger truck." So this is his way of telling me,
That's pretty
stay,
awesome.
stay with what you got.
That's pretty
You know,
awesome.
yeah.
He was a
You
good teacher.
he was in his
Uh,
way, and he had all these great parables. You talk about health being your wealth. So when I started my business, Manny, I was working 14-hour days, 16-hour
mhm.
days, and not eating well. And I've always been an athlete my whole life. And next thing I know, I'm at the doctor's office and she's telling me I'm 340 pounds. And if I don't lose
Wow.
the weight, I'm not going to see my daughter graduate. My daughter was just
Mhm.
born. So I'm driving home punching the steering wheel. How did I let myself? This is me. This is my
Mhm.
pie hole. I got myself here. I'm a 46-inch waist. What's so I changed everything I did. Next 6, 7 months, I
Wow.
lost 130 pounds and I
Wow.
kept it off. Yeah, you can't look at it as a finishing line, right? Like you got to
That's huge.
change everything. And so people want a quick answer, especially when it comes to weight loss. Big industry, of course, we have an issue with that, which is ironic. What we just talked about with our parents, there's too much food available, too much bad food. But people always ask me, how do I do it with your secret? And my one word answer, man, is discipline. That's how I
Okay.
lost it. Willpower, routine, restraint, focus, and all part of discipline. I wonder how discipline plays a role in your life.
Oh, for me, it was a long. It's been a long. Let's just call it a lifetime journey of trial and error. All
Mm,
right, trial and error. I'm always trying to get a little bit better every day. Okay, I'm trying to deliver my service in a a more meaningful manner. So I learned it. I'm always trying to do things more efficient so they're not boring. This is not exactly a field that, you get people's undivided attention, right? So closing a sale is exhilarating, right?
Mm.
Collecting accounts receivable is boring, like, watching
Mm.
paint dry. So for me, it was literally trial and error. I did not want to have any self-imposed limits. I wanted an unlimited life. And I didn't want to be poor, right? That was my driver.
Yeah.
I didn't want to be poor. But as I got older, I feel like I've been very blessed. I just learned through trial and error, and being busy or working 60, 70, 80 hours, 90 hours, whatever.
Mm.
How does that translate into what you're trying to do? I've done it, but it wasn't making me any more money.
Mm.
It was hurting my health. So again, that's the best way I can put it. A lifetime journey of trial and error, and finally, seeing certain errors of my ways and trying to be unemotional about stuff, which is difficult because I'm a passionate Greek.
Yeah.
All right. You got to get unemotional. And they say you got to be unemotional about your business, unemotional about these investments you're making. Just be unemotional. It's hard. So you just got to keep at it, in my opinion.
Yeah, it certainly is. Interesting how you relate discipline to like trial and error like that. And that's another thing that we talked about before, Manny, about a lot of business owners find it hard to trust financial people because they see them naked. And also it's their baby, right? Don't you dare tell me my baby's not doing well, right? Because
That's
there's
right.
emotions to it, right? Don't you dare
Yeah.
tell me that,
Uh-huh.
that means I'm not good. And that, so it could be very touchy. You got to be
Yeah.
really personable like yourself and be able to speak matter of factly and at the same time with a smile. This is nothing personal. These are just the facts.
Yeah. It's not easy. You meet a client and they're like, "Hey, I've had this business 25 years. Who are you? What do you
Right.
want?"
Yeah.
And they don't want to let you in. But look, after the first few recommendations, when they see some cash showing up in the bank account, that's where the rubber hits the road. They're like, "Look, I
Mm.
had this level of cash, and this guy comes over and convinced me to try a couple of things. And you know what? 90 days later, I've got some more cash in the bank."
Mm. Mm.
And that gets their attention. So it's those first few months where you have your opportunity to build trust. And, it takes time because you have to understand the business. I don't know everything there is to know about Joe Panone's business model as a tech
Mm.
guy. Joe knows. I need to ask him, "Hey, could you do this? Could you do that? It's got less labor in it. You could make more money." No, Manny, that's not market. It's a conversation, a series of conversations and some time. And then once the cash, little extra cash shows up, that's where you got the business owner's attention, Joe.
Yeah. Developing that trust. What motivates you, Manny?
I'm self-motivated. I had this, something went wrong in the early childhood developmental process, Joe. That's all I can tell you. I did not want to be poor. I come from a
Right.
poor family. There's nothing wrong with that. But I was born in America. And, before all this social media, we were seeing the Hollywood stars and
Right.
lifestyles of the rich and famous. And I did not want to be poor. And I was willing to work my butt off. Okay. I didn't expect anything to be handed to me.
Mm.
That's how I was trained by my parents. You got to work for it. You want
Mm.
something, work, save your money, go get it. So I was fully prepared. I left. I relocated to get my job in the bank. When I made
Wow.
my career change, I relocated from Maryland to Texas to go get that job. And my parents were like looking at me all wide eyed. And I'm like, "What are you guys looking at?" I said, "It's what I'm about to do is nothing compared to what you've done.
Right.
I am moving to Texas where there's a 7-Eleven on every corner and
Yeah.
everybody speaks English."
Right.
I said, "I'm not going to starve."
You're getting
You know,
health
you
care. Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
You guys got on a boat for 3 weeks. You were in the
Right.
bottom of the boat, right? You
Yeah.
came to a place that didn't want you and you didn't speak the language. I'm like,
Right.
I ain't got nothing, none of that going on. And my father's parting words were, "This door is always open," with his
Mm.
thick Greek accent. I'm like, okay, you know.
How do you measure success?
It's a personal. I think everybody has their own definition. In my world, it's a feeling of satisfaction.
Hmm.
So I feel great every day because I am a small part of some really big teams, and I can see my small contributions um, occur in these businesses every month. So I help make people's lives better. I take away their anxiety. So as a first generation guy born in America, that's my definition of success, which by the way changed radically since I was young. When I
Hmm.
was young, I defined success as big house, big
Hmm.
car, big
Hmm.
clothes. You know, it's called the bigger, better deal in America, the
Hmm.
BBD. But as I got older, I saw that all of that stuff, in my opinion, was superficial.
Hmm.
That the only thing that remained was me. You know, my father came to a foreign country and worked as a waiter and lifted his whole family out of abject poverty. If it wasn't for his generosity, then his siblings would be dirt poor still.
Wow.
But it was his willingness to give them the money that he earned that got them all out of abject poverty and gave them a shot at a, let's just call it an everyday life.
Hmm.
I mean, they're not lighting up cigars with $100 bills, but they're not trying to eat beans every day either. And that's because of my
Right.
dad. So I cannot fit in his shoes. That weighs on me every day, Joe. So that helps shape my definition.
Just the humbleness of that.
That's it. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's inspiring. We can all learn something from that, can't we? It's being first generation, the son of immigrants. It's just it's a different way of thinking.
I tell
Different way
all
of
my
thinking.
friends that are, most of my friends are first generation.
Yeah.
And we talk about it. I can't beat what my dad did.
Right.
There's no beating it. I didn't lift my family out of abject poverty,
Right.
right? No, I can't beat it. So what I do is I honor it and I keep that
Mm.
as my guiding light, right? And it's my inspiration to continue to move and keep that crazy self-motivated ambition of mine focused in the right direction. That's how I
Mm.
use it.
And without him telling you that's what you know he would want you to do.
Yeah, he didn't even tell me he lifted his family out of abject poverty.
Right.
I had to figure it out.
Mm.
You know, I had to put the pieces of the puzzle together because he wasn't like that. He was a humble dude,
Right.
you know? Yeah.
Yeah, just so
So,
different.
mhm. So I
And
have fun every day.
yeah.
I'm helping my business owner clients. They're referring me to other business owner clients, right? And I think that's it can't get any better than that feeling of satisfaction and the success. I'm making a difference
Mm.
in business owners' lives.
I love helping business owners because they need
Mhm.
it. It's tough. I remember the one of the first big breaks I had, Manny, is when I joined a peer group and I was
Okay.
able to kind of talk to others the way I couldn't talk with anybody else. That was one of the big
Mhm.
changes in my professional life. I'm sure you've had success there or know about peer groups.
Yeah, I highly recommend them to my clients. That way, they don't need to listen to my rhetoric all the time.
Mm.
Highly recommended. Go out and get into a group that's got other business owners and talk.
Commiserate. Yeah.
Highly, highly, highly recommend it. You know,
Absolute pleasure speaking with you, Manny. Oh goodness, I love this so much. Anybody listening, how can they get in touch with you?
my website portal CFO PORTAL CFO.com. Got my contact information on there. Got some, interesting blogs that I've written over
Oh
the
yeah, 12 years
what
of
my teachers
blogs.
and mentors
Yeah.
have taught me. Yeah.
Yeah, writing is important. I see that. You actually no more than 12. I think 12 years was only on WordPress. You've been actually like more than like 15 or 15 years.
I was on Blogger, yes.
Blogger first.
I'm
Yeah.
very impressed,
Yeah.
Joe.
Yeah.
Blogger.com, yeah.
Yeah, I remember Blogger. I think it's still around.
Mhm.
But many of us have
I
moved
didn't know that.
over. Yeah, I'm not sure. Portalcfo.com. Manny Skivofilax, thank you so much for your time. Next time I'm in the greater Maryland area, I'd love to get together and have a cup of tea.
Anytime, Joe. It was my pleasure. Thank you for having me on your show. I
You
enjoyed
be
it.
well. I appreciate it.
You
Bye
too.
now.
Bye.
Thank you for listening and or viewing Joey Pinn's Discipline Conversations. Please share this episode with one or two of your friends who you think may benefit from the episode. Our website, www.joeypins.com. There you'll find lots of resources and you could join our mailing list. Please follow us on all our social media, Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. Podcast information, the video version of our podcast is on YouTube. Please subscribe. Audio is on all major podcasting platforms. Please follow them. And if you like it, please consider giving 5-star rating. Would really appreciate that. Thank you again for listening or watching Joey Pinn's Discipline Conversations.